And today I want to talk to you about one real passion project of mine, one of the many games that I've developed, the one that I've honestly played the most. Two of my playtester friends have told me that it is their favorite game, not just of the games that I've made, but favorite game, period. We have played it for a little over 4 years, playing about every other Friday over that probably 4.5 year period. And so it has had, it's had to have had more playtesting than most games that have ever hit the market, if not nearly all of them. And we play 2 to 3 games every time we get together and play, at least. So it has had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of playtest games. We've used every team that's available in the game, and we have fought a variety of different ways. But this game is a big, big deal. And it's one of the games that I'm actually currently already getting art for from an artist in Brazil, a very talented guy named Caio Oliveira. He's really fantastic, but artwork is just slow. It's also expensive. And so that's why I have this Patreon page, is to get help to get artwork on my games so I can get my games out there. And this first game that I want to talk to you about today, this one it's called Bloodfist. And now there's 4 different versions of Bloodfist, and we're going to talk about them today. Each one plays differently. Technically it's 4 different games, and the way I have this designed, I plan on putting 3 of them in one box once this game is ready and goes to Kickstarter. It's going to have 3 different games in the box. The first one will be Bloodfist Champions, which is the original game. And it is a game where each player that's playing the game is going to build a team of 5 characters. And those characters fight in arenas like the one that's here on the table right now. This arena is the Samur Island arena. And those characters basically go in to fight to the death. Now, it doesn't always end in death. We can go over that in a minute. But it is a deathmatch, 5-on-5 arena fighting. And your goal, there's 3 ways to win the match. One is to get a kill on your opponent. In other words, kill one of their players. And if you successfully kill one and that kill sticks, then the game is over immediately by death. And both teams will get bonus points based on the number of rounds left remaining in the game. The game is fought in 2 8-round halves. So each team gets 8 turns per half to try to exert their will over their opponents. And I have before you 2 different teams ready to go. But I wanted to showcase the artwork first that I've had done so far. These are 2 of the teams that Caio has finished, and I've printed these samples. These are by no means the finished product, but this is a representation of what I want the players to look like. So this is the Ronin Brawler from the Samurai team. He's a really good example of what I want the players to look like, the kind of artwork that I'm going for on this. And he is a really cool guy. All of them are really cool guys, let's be honest. But so this Samurai team here will be fighting against the Plains Legion team here. And we're not going to go through a whole game or anything, but I just wanted to kind of give you some examples of gameplay so that you can see how the game works. So these marks in the middle that are red and black, those are the center of the arena. The yellows that are on each side, those are where players who have been knocked out of the game temporarily come back when they come back into the game. But these center hexes, each team must put at least 2 players in those center hexes. So a typical setup might look something like this. We'll put him here. And then let's go with the brawler, our champion. So I have 2 in the middle, and that's the minimum required. So then the other team has to set their players up, and I'm just going to do this randomly. The archer will stay in the back, though. Here we have our ogre. That's our muscle. He's going to go in the front. Here's our guard. He'll actually go right here. I'm not doing it randomly at all, am I? And then our swordsman, he's kind of every team has really good characters and a few not as good players on them. And so this swordsman is actually the softest for this team. So he's kind of over here on the side. So the team that sets up second goes first. So the Plains Legion would get to go first. But here's how this game works. You first decide if you want to attack someone, and then you make that move, and you roll dice to see if the attack is successful. If the attack is successful, then you roll dice, and by successful I mean knocked the opponent down. You could have just pushed him. You could have knocked yourself down. There's a 1 in 6 chance that you knock yourself down straight up. There's a 1 in 6 chance that you knock both of you down, unless one of you has a skill that keeps you from going down. That skill is called defend. And then there is a 1 in 6 chance that you just pushed him when you roll those dice, and that's per die. And we'll talk about the number of dice you roll later. Then there's a 1 in 6 chance that you pushed him down unless he has a skill to avoid it, which is called avoid. Basically means he kept you from tripping him up. And then there is a 2 in 6 chance that you just straight up knocked him down. So that would basically be the numbers 5 and 6 on a die. And those two are just an instant knockdown. You include a push with it. So if this guy knocked this one down with a 5 or a 6, he would push him. And then he has the option to take that spot that the guy was in if he wants to. That's called following up. Or he doesn't have to do that, of course. So, so once you knock them down, here we go. Then as soon as someone hits the ground, the first thing that has to be done is the person who knocked them down has to roll to see if they have broken their armor when they knocked them down. So you roll 2 6s and you compare the result of that to the armor of the person that you knocked down. So this Ashigaru, his armor is an 8. So you roll 2 6s, and if the total is 8 or greater, then you have broken his armor. And if you're successful at that, then you roll again to see what kind of injury you gave him. And it could be something simple like a stun. If you roll a 1 through 7 on 2, you roll 2 6-sided dice again. If you roll a 2 through 7, then you've only stunned him. If you roll an 8 or a 9, you've knocked him out of the game, which means he leaves the field. He goes to the sideline over here, back behind the dugout for the team, and he is face down until your next turn. And then after that, he has a chance to come back every turn of the game after that. And then last, if it's a 10, 11, or a 12, it means it's a really bad hit. You hit him really hard and you likely permanently injured or killed him. And so then that requires one more roll, which is again, just 2 6-sided dice. This whole game is nothing but 6-sided dice. And there are a lot of results on that chart. In fact, I have the chart here to show you. So you first roll to see if you break their armor. And once it's broken, you roll on this chart, the armor broken chart. And that tells you what kind of result you got from breaking his armor. And then if that one is the 10 or the 12, then you go to this chart. And this is a variety of things that happen after that. And it's not actually all bad. If you end up on that last die roll, rolling a 2, a 3, or a 4, then you didn't actually hurt the guy. He faked an injury to get off the field, and he ends up back on his sideline, ready to go back as soon as his player's turn begins again. He's immediately up and awake and ready to go because he faked an injury. However, for hitting a guy hard enough that he faked an injury to get out of it, your team still gets 3 experience points. And I want to go over that here for a second. So the whole concept of this game is you're not just fighting and trying to win a game. You are fighting with your team, and your team gets better as the game goes on. So when you knock someone down, let's go back to where they started. When you knock someone down and crack his armor, you break his armor with the hit, which means you've successfully equaled or exceeded his armor level. You're guaranteed to earn some experience points. Those experience points are experience points for the player that performed the action, and they are team points that get put on the scoreboard to try to help your team win. And there are 3 ways to win. We'll go over more of that in a minute. If you stun a player, which means you just temporarily stunned him when you knocked him down. It's the softest armor break there is. It means basically that he can't do anything on his next turn. Instead, at the end of his turn, he flips over. And then at the beginning of his next turn, he's allowed to stand up and start participating again. Just a stun is all it was. If you just stun somebody, your player and your team get 1 point. If you knocked him out, which was the 8 or the 9, then he left the field. Your player gets 2 experience points, your team gets 2 team points, and play continues on. If you get to the serious injury chart, the minimum you're going to score is 3 points. So this is when, after you've broken his armor, you've rolled a 10, an 11, or a 12 on the dice. That means it's worse than a knockout, most likely, and you're guaranteed at least 3 points. So the fake injury, 3 points. The severe concussion, which is a 5 result on that final 2 6-sided die roll. Severe concussion just means he's out for the rest of the game, but there's no lingering effects. You get 3 points. The other ones are a broken bone that you gave the guy, means he's out for the rest of this game, and he loses a speed point. So this player would now be 1 point slower, is worth 3 points. Compound fracture, -1 agility, so he permanently loses an agility point, and he's out for the rest of the game. You get 3 points. A slip disc, he's out for the game and loses a strength point permanently. That one's also worth 3 points. Then there's a busted skull. He's out for the game and loses an armor. It's obviously just still a serious injury, so you gain 3 points and your team gains 3 points. And that's on a 9. But if you roll a 10, 11, or 12 on that final roll, that is a kill, death, murder, death, kill. And that's worth 5 points, both to the player that performed it and to the team as a whole for the scoreboard. And if the opponent who took that death, if this guy just died, if he has a cleric, he pretty much has to use that cleric now, because if he doesn't, the game is over. We'll get to the victory conditions on a game in a minute. But when someone dies, the game is over. Now, if I do use my cleric and my cleric manages to make it where he doesn't die, then it's not game over yet, because the death didn't stick. The death has to stick for it to count to the end of the game. So one way to win the game is to kill an opponent, right? And even if it does end of the game right then, the player that did it still gets 5 points. The team still gets 5 points. But the team that got the kill, not that suffered the kill, but that got the kill, and let me actually change that. The team that did not suffer the kill, because it's occasional that someone could die without being hit by an opponent. It's extremely rare, but it happens occasionally. The team that did not die automatically wins the game, even if they were behind on points, even after that 5 points that they just gained. So the way it works basically is there's 3 ways to win. 1, get a kill that sticks against your opponent. If you kill one of his players, not only is that player, and it sticks, not only is that player dead, and when I say dead, I mean permadeath, permanently gone, has to be replaced player. But the game is immediately over and you win as the team that did not die, but that helped cause a death. You win. That's the first way to win a game. The second way to win a game is what we call a TKO. And that is when you have injured or knocked out all 5 of your opponents at the same time. Now, it doesn't have to happen in the same round, but if you had previously knocked out this guy or injured that guy and he was gone from the game, and this guy was gone from the game, and this guy was knocked out, and I only had these 2 left, and during your turn with the Plains Legion, you managed to knock this one out and injure this one, that's game over because I have no players left on the board. If you ever get all 5 of my players off the board at the same time, even if one of them was fine and was going to come back on my turn, the fact is he's not there right now. And if all 5 are gone at the same time, it's game over, TKO. The winner and loser both get some bonus points based on the number of rounds that were left, and the team that did not get TKO'd automatically wins, even if they were behind in points when the TKO occurred. So a death or a TKO guarantee you a victory, even if you've been losing the entire game. I have been winning a game by a significant amount of points, all the way up till the very last turn of a game, and lost because my opponent killed one of my players. There is always a puncher's chance in Bloodfist Champions for the person who's been losing an entire match to come back and win it. Just like in real life, how it doesn't matter what the odds are, every once in a while something miraculous can happen. So those are 2 of the ways to win. The other way to win is obviously to outscore. I've already been talking about points and rounds. It's obviously to outscore your opponent. In the 16 turns, I've mentioned how every time one of your players scores an experience point, it scores your team a team point on the scoreboard. Well, at the end of 16 turns, if no one has died permanently and there hasn't been a TKO, then the game is decided by which team scored the most points at the end of 16 turns. And that team is the victor. Now, both teams at the end of a game get 5 MVP points to give to whatever player they want to that's still alive. And those experience points help your players go up in level. And when they go up in level, they can gain more speed. They could gain strength. They could gain agility. They could gain armor. Or they could learn a new skill or a new powerful mutation, depending on the team that you've chosen and what their skill tree for each character looks like. As players go up in level, they get better. And the real sticky wicket part of this whole thing is they are not, I think I've said the word death enough times or kill enough times for you to realize these players aren't permanent. Your players can die. Your players, if you play through a whole season of Bloodfist Champions, there's a really good chance that you're going to suffer at least 1 death on your team. And that's what actually makes the game so great. The reason is because it's one thing to build a sports team in a game or build up a fighter in a UFC game or something like that. But when you build these teams, you're gaining experience on these players and they're getting better. And suddenly it goes from, this writing on a team sheet of who your players are, such as this one, for example. Let me grab one of mine because my handwriting is a little bit better than the other guys. So this is a brand new team of mine that has not quite fought yet, but we're about to start a league with. These are the Berserker Battalion. And you see that they have, each character has a cost. You have to buy the players. A speed, strength, agility, armor, and some starting skills. So as they gain experience and go up in level, they'll gain more of these skills, or they might gain, a little bit here and there. If you roll really well on those levels up, they might gain some statistical ability. But man, when they die, especially once you've built one up to level 5, level 6, level 7, and he went from being all characters in the beginning of the game, almost all characters are a little bit of a liability. They have some weaknesses. In general, most characters have a weakness. They're just not quite as good as you're going to be able to make them once they've gained some experience. And having built a guy up and gotten him 4 or 5 new skills, or maybe a strength point and an extra armor point, and make him big and tough and strong. And then suddenly your opponent gets a good string of dice together and kills him. it's heartbreaking. It's terrible. It's the worst thing that could happen to your team, especially when it's your big guy, when it's, the ogre or the berserker, the big orc on the berserker team, or your samurai champion, because not only was he your pride and joy, he was the heartbeat of the team, but he's expensive to replace. You may not even have the money to fully replace him with a character exactly like him, or one of the same class right then. You may have to save up for it. But oh my gosh, you have to suddenly replace a guy, and your team, you kind of feel like you start over a little bit. You took a step back, and it's painful. So your team grows, and you own them, and you feel that hurt whenever it happens, because you've built them into what they were. And so it's a really important part of the game. It happens to everybody. It doesn't mean it makes it easy for it to happen. Believe me, I've had enough of my players die, especially ones that were doing great, that I had really focused on and given a lot of attention to and really built up through experience. It's a devastating loss sometimes, but you move through it. You try to rebuild the team. You try to rebuild the new player that takes his place and get them back to where they were. And it's a gratifying experience to suffer a loss like that and yet continue to grow through it. So it's a really important part of the game to be able to do that kind of thing. I don't want to talk anymore about permadeath. I think I've established that it's a function of the game. It's both a function in the gameplay aspect, as far as a way for games to be resolved, but it's also a function of the replayability of the game, the feeling of ownership of a team, the commitment that you put into the game. You really get paid off on, and you'll really have some emotions for the players on your team. So it's a really cool thing. There are archers in the game. There's a ninja on one team. And you know what? The next thing we need to talk about actually is the teams, I'm sorry. This is such a big game. It's such a big world that I've created. I did it all from scratch. And the world has dozens of races, but more importantly than the races, as far as this game is concerned, are the teams that those races participate in. So let's talk about that next. I'm going to move these players aside just so I'm not bumping any of them when we go through these. There are 45 different teams to choose from in Bloodfist Champions. 45. Unique. Each one is different from all the other ones. Teams to choose from. And let me scratch that. There are 44 unique teams to choose from. There are 45 teams total. There's one team called the Creeper that is only used in specialty leagues. They aren't actually their own team. They allow you to go recruit players from all of the other teams based on a die roll. It's a kind of a feast or famine type team. And you're only allowed to use Creeper teams against other Creeper teams because it's the only way it would be fair. But as far as the 44 basic teams, I want to go through some of them with you. We're not going to touch on all of them, but I want you to see how unique. This is obviously in a fantasy world. There are orcs and dragons. There are gnomes and dwarves and elves. There are a variety of different things. Sentient animals, lycanthropes, vampires, zombies, all kinds of things. So I want to go through just a few of the teams at least talk about the types of teams there are, and then we'll talk a couple of specifics. But what's most interesting, I think, what most people find most interesting about it is even in the varieties of teams that may seem familiar. Take humans, for example. In most fantasy worlds, there's some type of human. And I obviously have humans in my world also. There are 6 different human teams you can choose from in Bloodfist Champions. And some of them are your typical grab bag of human teams, human types that you might expect to find in a fantasy world. The Plains Legion is one of them. They have 5 players available to that team: a swordsman, an archer, a guard, a paladin, and an ogre. The ogres have teamed up with them. There's a whole history about it. You can read about it sometime if you end up buying the game. But there's a reason the ogres fight with them. That is not the first time that's ever happened to me. Hopefully it will be the last. I hate it when the camera falls. I need to quit bumping the table. So, the human teams, there's the Plains Legion, which is basically a community of farmers they make their own teams for the Bloodfist Championships, and they get to include the ogres. There are the samurai. They come from Samurai Island, and you already saw a couple examples of them in that little preview we had at the beginning. There are the Vikings. Sure, there's a lot of Vikings in fantasy. The Imperial Legion, which is like if the Plains Legion weren't farmers, but were instead city folks, and they were run by an emperor who's kind of a dick, that's the Imperial Legion. And they're a totally different type of team than the Plains Legion, but they're your basic humans. And then you have two that aren't very basic. You have the Assassin's Guild, and these are where people see a big difference in the world that I've built and most others. The Assassin's Guild is a bunch of players who are very non-physically imposing. They're not scary. They're not tough. They're not strong. But they have a variety of skills that help them make up that difference. Two of them are allowed to, instead of attacking other players, they're allowed to just try to stab them. It's called shank. And both of them have poison blades when they do it. They also have a good archer. And their ninja is bar none one of the best characters in the game. He is nasty. And then the last human team is like nothing in a human team you've ever seen before. They're called the Juicers. And the Juicers, if you're familiar with the world of Rifts, Juicers in that world were taken by the Federation, which normally is considered to be the good guys. And they were given steroids, which dramatically shortened their lifespans, but greatly enhanced their strength and speed and things like that. Well, there are no steroids in my world. This is a fantasy world, not a futuristic. This is a medieval, I guess, fantasy world, not a futuristic tech world. And so these juicers drink magic potions that adjust, that transform them, mutate them, if you will, into one very specific direction. For instance, the Dasher is a juicer who's been made absolutely as quick as possible. He has the maximum agility of 7. Then there's the Speeder, who's absolutely as fast as possible. He has the maximum speed of 10. The Bull has the maximum armor of 10. He is as tough as they come. And then the Freak. You're allowed to have one Freak on a juicer team. And the Freak is the maximum strength of 7. He is a hulking brute of a person. So, it's rare that you find a human team that has someone on the team that is a maximum strength character. But in this world, there is a human team that has that. Like I said, I don't want to go through every team, but we're going to highlight a few of these just so you can see some of the differences between my fantasy world and what you might expect to have out of a fantasy world that has dwarves and elves and orcs and dragons and all that kind of thing. So we move on to the orcs. There are 4 different orc teams. You have your regular orcs. I call them the Dark Orc Kingdom. They're your basic orcs. And they have what's also generally considered regular orcs, but I give them a special name. They're called the Berserker Battalion. And the Berserkers are very powerful. They're the team sheet that I showed you earlier. That's my Berserker Battalion team. They're the shock troops of the Dark Orc Kingdom, but they're their own separate team. And they are designed to absolutely just charge headlong into every fight and try to crush their opponent. Now, it leaves them vulnerable, but only if they don't get the kill first. And then there are the Shaman Orcs, which are orcs that decided they wanted to make a deal with Fire Elemental and work some black twisted magic. And they have basically created a gigantic team member called the Breathless, or as when we're playing as them, when I have that team, I call him the Breathless. And they are, they're really cool. They have a shaman that can throw a fireball every game. And then the Breathless himself is basically half plant, half orc that has a really disgusting set of skills you don't normally find in orcs. And he really kind of makes the team hum. He makes them a lot better. And they're allowed to have mutations also, since they are so twisted with black magic on that team. And then last is an orc team like you've never heard of before. They're the orcs of the June Temple. I call them the Temple Orcs in short. And they are orcs that have broken off from main orc society to create their own city, their own civilization, because they realized they felt an emptiness. They wanted more out of life than just blood and dirt. And so they separated from all the other orcs that live in the desert, and they put themselves out right on the edge of the desert where it just starts to get green. And they built a temple there where they've studied religion, and they've studied meditation, and they've studied philosophy, and they've studied martial arts. Imagine the muscle of orcs combined with the dedication and the self-control of martial arts. They're a really talented team. They're not quite as strong as the other orc teams, but they're just as tough. And in some ways, they're even scarier because they've harnessed the strength and put some real skills with it. So they're a unique team. Out of the dwarves, you have your standard. I have hill dwarves. They're kind of the nice dwarves that have a big old huge giant hammer tank on their team. That's a really terrifying piece of equipment that gets to roll with them on their team. The mountain dwarves, they're the evil whiskey swilling dwarves. You know, the hill dwarves are happy because they drink beer all day, but the mountain dwarves, they're kind of sullen and dark and somber because they drink whiskey all day. And because they're always up in the mines and always messing around with stuff, they can get mutations. They have a mountain scorpion, a giant mountain scorpion, and a giant rockworm on their team that are really cool too. They're really good players for that team. Another dwarf team is the Gnomish Inventors. You don't actually see any gnomes on the field. You only see their inventions. They're inside them, piloting them. But the Gnomish Inventors team is all about the gnomes. All about the gnomes' inventions. And so they have tanks and cycles and a blob boat and even a blade spinner. It's basically like a motorcycle, but with blades on the wheels. But the last dwarf team is like nothing you've ever heard of. Again, I try to have at least one in every collection of teams. And so of the 4 dwarf teams, there's one called the Dwarves of the Blessed Mountaintop. In short, I call them holy dwarves. They have a deep religion that is the foundation of their society, where there's a player on their team called the Golden Sacrifice, who's horrible. He has the softest armor in the game. He has the lowest strength in the game. He's slow. He has no agility at all. He can't dodge anything. He can't fight anyone. And he very rarely makes it through even half of a game. But the part that makes it important, the reason he's on the team, is because when he gets hurt or when he gets killed, he's one of the rare players. He's the only player that can die, physically die. He's gone from the team. He's dead. But the game isn't over. That doesn't lose the game for the Holy Dwarves. Because his goal in life, his role on the team, is to get hurt and get dead. Every time he does, he blesses all the players on the rest of his team with bonus experience points. They want him to get hurt. They want him to die. These dwarves are a death cult. And they throw parties when the Golden Sacrifice gets killed. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to them. There are 5 different elf teams. 2 of them are very unique. 3 of them really are very unique. The Mong Elves, a combination of Mongols and elves. The Corrupted Elves, they're run by a big, strong woman, a very muscled up, still attractive elven lady who sexually corrupts males to join her team. And so you have the woman on top running the team, being the big badass on the team. She's the muscle, she's the brute force behind the team. And then she brings in some male elves and they help to flesh the team out, and they play all the other positions. They give it its roundness, they give the team some depth. And they are the only elf team that can physically go toe-to-toe with just about any other team because they're so strong. You don't normally see that in an elf team. And then there's another one that's called the Bergantion. They commune with birds, and so each of them has feathers, and they look like they resemble the birds with which they commune. So some of them are storm crow, some of them are hawk, some eagle, some of them are the buzzard, the falcon, and so they're able to. They're a very different type of elf team than the rest. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different animal teams. One of the special ones is the lemmings. I think you know what lemmings are. If you don't, they're the mice that in most fairy tales are so stupid that they basically follow each other around and get each other killed. They walk off cliffs, walk into snake holes. They're just helpless. And so the lemming team is so small, they're so weak, that they're allowed to have, while all the other teams are allowed to have 5 players on the field, lemmings are allowed to have 8 because they're that small and that weak. And so their only hope really is to have so many people out there that they can surround their opponents and hopefully be able to knock them down and get something out of it that way. Lycanthropes, they're angry primates, the dogs of war, which are led by a Cerberus. And then there's also the insect armies, these giant overgrown insects from the jungle that are led by a bulljack ant, they're really powerful. They've won a championship or 2, in fact, over the years that my friends and I have been playing this. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I believe there's one on the other page, 8 different pure evil teams. There's the Corrupt, which is mostly made up of undead players. There's the Black Death, which has a few undead players plus a wizard and some other players. They're really cool. They have a Death Knight and a Lich on the team. The Dark Lord team, it's a really cool team that gets mutations. There's the Mythos Heroines, which are based on Greek goddesses, not necessarily goddesses, the evil Greeks like Medusas and the Lamia, the Erinyes, the Harpy, the demons, the Black Plague, which is a team full of zombies with a necromancer. And then there's the Dark Wizard team. They are a team full of fireball throwing, lightning bolt calling wizards. And they are terrifying to play against until they run out of spells. If you can make it through the first several turns when they run out of spells before halftime, if you're still alive and they're not outrageously ahead in points, you got a good shot of winning. You just have to weather the storm, at first, of lightning bolts and fireballs. So, and then of course there's a vampire team. Remember how I told you each team's allowed to have 5 players, but the lemmings are allowed to have 8? Well, the giants are allowed to have 3 because they're so much bigger and stronger than everybody else. They can only field 3 players at a time. There's many more teams. There's several that are in the Twisted Nature category. There's even a team of alien females called the Quadria that they're very unique. And so you have a huge variety of teams. Each of them has different characters on them. Each of those characters has his own set of skills that he begins with, at least one skill that they begin with. Some players start with close to 10. And then their skill trees, in other words, when they go up in level, what kind of skills they can gain, those are individualized for each player also. So every team is completely unique. There's been a lot of effort put into this game, and I think you can agree with me there. Speaking of skills, this is the list of all the skills in the game, and I'm not going to hold it too still for you because you don't need to read all of it. But let me tell you this much. These skills are ones that if you didn't start with them, you'll never have them. It's called can't learn. Can't learn these skills. But all the rest of the skills, which are these and all of these, you can pick up during the game. Or some of your characters will start with some of them, and you can learn more as you go. And there are tons and tons of skills that hopefully make fighting your opponent or outlasting your opponent, being tougher than him, a little bit easier. And so the real race in Bloodfist Champions is not just winning games. It's coming out of them unscathed. Even if you lost the game, if you injured a couple of your opponents and they didn't injure any of your guys, you may have lost the game, but you really kind of won the war. So that's a real key aspect to the game, is keeping your team whole as much as possible and getting them to level up, keeping the experience rolling, keeping them getting better and stronger. So I mentioned to you that there are 4 different versions of this game. This is the first one. This is Bloodfist Champions. It's 5 versus 5 arena combat. And it's played in a league or tournament style so that your players, you continue with the same team. What we normally have is between 8 and 12 games for a season. And then once that season is over, we use their records against each other to seed them for a tournament. And we'll run about 4 leagues, 4 seasons, say of 10 games for each team. And so after we've done that 4 times, each of us now has 4 teams that I then seed into a tournament. And then we have a tournament to find out who the champion of those 4 leagues was. For almost 5 years, we've been doing that. For 4.5 years, we've been doing that. We've been through, I want to say, 16 championship tournaments. So 50 or 60 leagues, tons of championship tournaments. I have been a league champion before. I have ended a league in first place a few times. Not many, but a few. But I have never, ever won a championship. Ever. And it's not frustrating or annoying at all that I can't win at my own game. But I always have a blast even when I lose. It's just a fantastic game. So that's one of the 4 different versions of Bloodfist. The second version, before we go to the second version, I want to show you a couple more. You've already seen the Samurai Island arena. This is the Plains Legion arena. So this is where they do their fighting when they're the home team. This is one of the Orc arenas. It's in the desert. Like I mentioned earlier, the Orcs are all from the desert. And then the second version of Bloodfist that we're going to talk about is called Bloodfist Champions Battle Royale. This is the arena for Battle Royale. And what Battle Royale is instead of building a team of 5, you and all the other players, up to 32 players for this version, by the way, choose a team from the set of teams. Once a team has been chosen, no one else may choose that team, just like in the Bloodfist Champions, the original version. But each of you selects a team, and then you're given a certain budget to buy up one player from that team. And then those players, one for each of you, all start on these yellow or gray marks on the outside. And you're all fighting Battle Royale style, every man for himself, until either there's one man standing or you've gone the full 16 rounds. So these center hexes here that are the center one that's tinted darker, and then the 6 around it that are tinted red, those are special ones. If you begin your turn standing in the very center hex where it's tinted darker, the black, you gain 3 experience points immediately as soon as your turn begins that are both added to your character and to your scoreboard. So it's really important, these center hexes. The red ones, if you begin your turn standing in one of the red ones, then as soon as your turn begins, you gain 1 experience point and 1 on the scoreboard as well. So those center hexes are extremely important because they help push you toward a victory in the Battle Royale. Now you don't have to be in there to win. And in fact, those are really violent hexes to be in a multiplayer game. Everyone's going for those middle ones. So depending on the character you have, you may or may not want to mix it up in there. The strategy is different based on who's playing it and what character you have. However, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of more of it's a good way to introduce someone to the Bloodfist world. They only have to worry about one person. They only have to worry about the rules and the skills on one person. And so it's a neat introductory way to get someone into the game. It also can be used in conjunction with the original version of 5-on-5. If your league wants to do both, you could have, in 1 week, you could each have 2 matches with your 5-man team. And then the next week, everyone agrees to have 2 battle royales with one player from each of their teams. Now, it works just like the other one. If your player dies, they're dead. But you do have a cleric, in most cases, and some other ways to get out of it sometimes. So it's just it's a variant on the same game. It has all the same skills. There are a few small changes to the rules, simply because of positioning and some other things. But it's a second way to play. And this game is going to also be available in the box with the original game. It'll have one arena, and the rules will also be in the rule book on how to play it too. So it's not like you're having to buy two games. You're getting both of them just in the one box. And then there's two more. The third version of Bloodfist that I'm only going to talk about briefly because it's just not, it's hard to show role-playing games. I spent so much time building this world and writing the histories of the teams and the regions, building the geography of the place, talking about the characters and the players, talking about former champions who have won world championships in Bloodfist and everything else, that I thought it important I didn't think it important. I realized that I had already pretty much done half the work to make it an RPG. So I also have fully developed now Bloodfist RPG, where you and your friends can make characters, usually going to make them all on the same Bloodfist team. So you would all have to come to an agreement of what team you want to be on, and then make those characters be different members from that team. And then you adventure around in the world of Bloodfist, going from city to city, chasing tournaments and glory, chasing championships, maybe trying to qualify for the world championships. And also, generally, you know how role-playing games end up being, running amok, finding ways to rescue damsels or rob banks or, pull off missions for other people, whatever you want to do. It's a role-playing game. The world is yours, and you pursue what you want to pursue. So I've got the rules for all of that written up as well, that have made Bloodfist into a full-on RPG as well. That is also going to be included in this box. So it's 3 games for the price of 1. You're going to get the rules and everything, plus character sheets and how to build Bloodfist. There'll be a map in there as well, so you know where everything is. Speaking of maps, that gets me to the 4th version of Bloodfist, which I don't at this point have actually what's the word I'm looking for? I don't believe I'm going to include this with the other 3. I'm not even sure if I'm ever going to make it, finish it into a full-on board game, but it plays great. This is a previous version of the map of the world of Bloodfist that I made. I've since improved this significantly, but at the time I was just making it so that we could play this version of the game. And this is what I call Bloodfist Rule the World. This is the last version of Bloodfist we're going to talk about today. And Bloodfist Rule the World is getting rid of the Bloodfist tournament, getting rid of the arena combat, and making it more like a battle conquering game like Risk or something like that. There are 8 different teams that you can choose from, and you'll see that these colors all match the colors on the board. And so each of these teams is an alliance of different Bloodfist teams and races. So for instance, this yellow one is, if you choose the yellow team, you see you'll start here and here and here. You see those yellow ones, boom, boom, and boom. Those will be your starting 3 territories. And then you have these 24 generals, let me turn that around, that are all different. Each one is unique. They have their own health, their own armor, their own attack style, and their own special abilities. Every character, almost every character has a special ability. Some of the basic characters do not, but most of them do. For instance, here's Babbling Brook. He has a health of 8, an armor of 9, and his attack is a 3d20. So he rolls 3 20-sided dice when he attacks. And even though these two are on the same team, let's say that Babbling Brook was attacking Alfred the Scholar here to take his land. Babbling Brook would roll 3 20-sided dice, according to his attack right there. And then Alfred would compare those 3 rolls to his armor. So if Babbling Brook rolled a 12, a 15, and a 6, you compare those to the armor. Anything that equals or exceeds the armor value counts as a hit. And so that would have been 2 hits against him, and he would have lost 2 of his 7 health points. He'd be down to 5 health. So when it's your turn, you choose one of your generals that's on the field, one of your characters, to attack one of his neighbors. And then he attacks, does whatever damage he can do, and then that's the end of your turn. It's very fast. Play moves very quickly around the board. No one gets left out for very long, even if you're playing with a full 8 players, because it just moves around so fast. And the last, the player who hits the character who hits another character for his very last health point is the one that kills that character and gets to take his place on the board. And now he can either move into that neighboring province that is now available, or you can take one of your other characters who isn't in the game, smack him down, and put him there instead. And so that makes a huge difference on strategy. Each of these different teams, there's, like I said, there's 8 different teams. And each of these 8 different teams is 24 characters. But none of them have 24 characters that are really, really good. All teams have some really good characters, and all the teams have some really bad characters. I wouldn't say really bad, but not nearly as good characters. And so what you're weighing is the balance between having your good fighters on the front lines and your worst fighters protected behind them, or possibly just barely on, a side of a front line offering support kind of thing. And you're trying to weigh your advantage toward attacking here while defending here, or something in those regards, to get rid of all of your opponents. Because once you've lost your last general on the board, your last character on the board, you're out of the game. And so it's the person who's taken over all 24 that wins the game. Or you can, if you want a shorter game, you can make an agreement with all players that, the first one to, let's say 12, which is half. First one to own 12 lands wins. So it's a neat game. And once again, it's 8 very unique different alliance teams that you can choose from. And each of them plays very differently. Each of them starts out very differently. And it's a great deal of fun. Here's the reason we're having this video, guys. The important part of all of this right now is that none of this will get finished without your help. Artwork is expensive, and if you don't have a ton of money for it up front, it's also very, very slow. I pay my artist in Brazil a little bit every month, so he gives me a little bit of art every month. And we're working on the characters for Bloodfist. Like the samples that you've already seen, these are all from Kaio. In case you didn't get a good look at most of them, this is the Archer for the Plains Legion team. The Paladin for the Plains Legion team. The Guard for the Plains Legion team. The Swordsman for the Plains Legion team. And then the rest of the samurai that I did not show you, the Samurai Warrior. I love this guy. Really cool. Looks very samurai-y. I showed you the Brawler already. There's the other warrior. The Samurai Champion. And then the Ashigaru, which is just a spearman in Japan. They're peasant spearmen. Ashigaru means swift feet or quick feet. He's done a few more teams. I haven't printed out samples of them yet, but I'd like to get this stepped up. He can't afford to do more art and just let me owe it to him, and I wouldn't ask him to do that either. But I'd like to be able to pay for the rest of this artwork and get it finished so I can get these games to Kickstarter and I can get these games produced and out to you. And to do that, we need the money. I need the money up front to get the artwork so that he can focus on just my artwork for a couple of months and get the rest of these characters. How many characters, you ask? It's right at 200 different character artworks that I need. And it's a lot. and it will make what you'll get in the box once this game is ready, because there's 3 games in it. There's Bloodfist Champions, Bloodfist Champions Battle Royale, and Bloodfist Champions RPG. What you'll get in this box is 2 of these game boards, and I'm not sure which 2 it would be. You know, I don't know if they'll be random or if we'll let people pick. That'll be something we have to come to when we get there. 1 of the arenas for Battle Royale, a map of the whole world, the instructions for all 3 different games. That'll be the instructions for the RPG, for Bloodfist Champions, and for Bloodfist Battle Royale. That will also include all of the races, all the teams that you can choose from to play Bloodfist Champions. It'll include all of the skills in the rulebook as well, everything that you need to build teams and then to build them up once you start playing. It will come with 50 of these standee stands, or something very similar to them. And then it will come with, I hope you're sitting down, 520 standees, because some of the players, some of the characters in the game can be used more than once on a team. For instance, the Ashigaru for the Samurai team and the Swordsman for the Plains Legion team, you can have up to 8 of them on a team. 8 is the maximum number of players on a team. So if you just wanted to go super cheap, you could actually just buy 8 Ashigaru for your Samurai team and start that way. I wouldn't advise it. You're not going to win many games that way, but it's possible. So I want to make sure that every possibility is covered. So every box will have 8 Ashigaru in it. You're allowed to have up to 2 of the Samurai Warriors on your team. So each box is going to have 2 of them. You're allowed to have 2 Brawlers on your team. So each box is going to have 2 of them. And then you're allowed to have 1 Samurai Champion. So each box is going to have 1 of them. So just the Samurai team alone, where you're only allowed to have 8 characters total, I have to give you a total of 13 characters to choose from. And so there are over 500 cards that are going to be in the box, 500 different standees in the box, as well as the stands that go with them, as well as 2 sets of the custom attack dice. I'm getting the graphics worked on for those right now. Those are the ones that you have to roll to try to knock someone down. And then we're going to have some standard 6-sided dice in there so that you don't have to dig out your own if you don't want to play the game. And if you have friends that don't have their own dice, at the very least, it can be dice that they use. And it'll have the character and team sheets, plus all the other rules that go with the game. Like this is just a nice reference sheet. It tells you what you need to roll whenever you're trying to move away from another character or shoot another character, and then what happens when you break armor and all of that. It shows you all of the rolls all in one sheet that aren't your standard attack rolls. There's just a lot that's going to go into it. It's going to be a beautiful box. I think you'll agree that Kaio is doing a great job on the artwork, and we're going to highlight some of the characters on the box. But I want all this to be included in the game and get out to you sooner rather than 6 years from now when I can afford to pay for all the artwork on my own. It'll actually be another 3.5 or 4 years if we were to move at a certain pace. I'd like to get it out way sooner than that, and I can only do that if I pay for the artwork up front and get it done fast. So I hope you've enjoyed my long-winded explanation of Bloodfist Champions Battle Royale, and Bloodfist RPG, as well as Bloodfist Rule the World. And feel free to leave a comment or ask me a question. And I'd really appreciate your support so that we can get this done. This video is only one of very, very many videos that you'll start seeing on this page for other board games that I've made, board, card, dice games, all of them. I have about 20 that we're going to be making videos on because I need artwork for every game I've ever made. And all of these games are play tested. They're true. I've designed all of them myself. And I hope you agree that I'm all right in the graphic design department. All Kaio does on these is make the characters and the symbols for each team. I'm the one that laid them out on the page, put the words on it and the numbers on it and did all that kind of stuff. I'm going to handle all of that. I don't need to hire someone else for that. Your money's going to go only for artwork. And we're going to get as much artwork taken care of as possible for as many games as possible. Come back again soon. See if there's another game video you'd like to watch, because there's going to be a whole lot more where this came from. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time to spend with me here and talk about Bloodfist Champions. You guys are great. Thanks.